umbrella of Darkness Worldwide. Talk a bit here, because I don't want to fast forward here too quickly in the sequence of events, but talk a little bit about the match that you had with Douglas Andrews that inevitably led to Mr. Andrews no longer being able to compete at FGW.
Not only FGW, anywhere.
Point well taken.
It wasn't just loser leaves FGW, it was loser stops wrestling.
That is true.
So from the creation of the code to the night before we got heat, I believe. I'm sorry, the Friday Night Fury before we got heat, Douglas and I had our loser stops wrestling match, and it was absolutely one of the hardest fought battles of my life. We fought all around the ring. I did some stuff that I haven't done since, or before that night. And I also took the second hardest shot that I've ever taken with anything to the head that night with a steel chair from Douglas Andrews. But I still came out on top after even the involvement of the entire FGW and the code locker rooms broke out and interrupted my match.
So, little known fact, William Wolf, I don't think we've ever discussed this because, why would we? Because we haven't exactly been talking. I was forced to try to have logical conversations with that moronic Billy, but you and I actually have never had true conversation. So that night, that match with you and Douglas Andrews, I was in the back and I was watching on the monitor, intensely watching. Because at that point, I already knew what was to come. I knew where we were heading. I knew what Amos and I were planning to do at FGW. And I saw the reactions from that crowd. I saw the reactions for you. There's no question that even to this very day, you are, without question, one of the most popular stars, not just in FGW, but in this entire region. The people just seem to gravitate towards you. You're a symbol for them. They're drawn and attracted to you, and I saw that. And I knew that if there was anyone, any singular individual that we could make a statement against in the ring, it was with you. So inevitably, that match with Douglas Andrews led to the inevitable rivalry and feud between yourself and Scotty Amos. Now, before we talk further about that, I'm going to take a slight detour in our conversation here today on Radio Dark. And I'd like you to talk a little bit, if you will, in public, if you will, about your time with another local promotion, Battle on the Border Wrestling. Different style. You've had a rivalry with he's your cousin, your uncle. What exactly is Hooks to you?
If anybody here should know who my uncles and families are, I would imagine it would be you, huh?
Well, all right. So, you got me.
Hooks is my cousin. He got me in, Brad as I know him, he got me into the wrestling business. He got me into the tattoo business. Him and I have been feuding since long before FGW, long before Battle on the Border, long before CWAI. Him and I have had an intense relationship, should you say, a rivalry. We've always got love and respect for each other, for the most part. But we have been at each other's heels for as long as I can remember. I'll say my rivalry with Hooks at Battle on the Border are some of the hardest hitting and bloody and death-defying matches that I've had. I went through tables and got cut up by light tubes, and he split my whole head open with his meat hooks. I hit him in the face with my weed whacker. We used barbed wire, we used thumbtacks, we used nails. There's nothing that Hooks and I haven't and won't do together. And you know what? That includes sometimes teaming up when the need be.
So much like the relationship that you've had with Mr. J.C. Flash, a very similar relationship with Hooks. Ruthless, aggressive nature of William Wolf, regardless of who is standing across the ring. Now, I want to talk more about Hooks, but before I do, you mentioned that Hooks is the one that got you involved in being a tattoo artist. What a lot of fans may or may not know is that William Wolf is a legitimate tattoo artist. We were talking about it a bit earlier when we talked about the Zeta Memorial tattoos. But if you would, Will, talk a bit about being a tattoo artist and perhaps the parallels between the tattoo industry and the professional wrestling industry.
The parallel lies in that I like causing people pain. And I get paid for it at both jobs. It's pretty great.
That's an interesting viewpoint.
Hooks, Brad, he, was collecting more and more tattoos as I reached my young adulthood, and one day he said that the counter position was open at a shop that he got tattooed at. I was working for my dad at the time. It was a Friday. Hooks called me and said the shop was looking for a counter person. I applied, got the job, and quit that Friday. Quit my dad's job that Friday. Called him. He was across the country at the time. I called him, told him that I quit. I was starting my job as the counter person at the tattoo shop, and never looked back. That's been the only job I've had since 2008. I've worked in tattoo shops.
And just to make sure to help put some food on your family's table when this mess clears and things are back to normal, if someone wanted to get a tattoo by the infamous William Wolf, where can they find you?
I work at Skin-Craft in Northside, Cincinnati, on Hamilton Avenue. I don't have my card on me, so I don't know the exact address because I am bad at remembering things, because I have taken quite a few shots to the head, as you know.
I do, and sometimes those shots work to my detriment, if I remember correctly. But if someone was looking to reach out to you on social media, William Wolf, how would they reach you?
You can find my Facebook. Just search for William Wolf. Got a big picture of a wolf that I drew on it. You can Facebook message me there. I do require a deposit to make an appointment, so you have to come in and make an appointment once the actual pandemic is over with and we're allowed out of our houses again. Excuse me while I open this beer. Yeah, find me on Facebook, find my shop, put down a deposit, let's make some tattoos.
All right, excellent. So definitely William Wolf painting a picture today of a gentleman that marches to the beat of his own drummer. Now, coming back to FGW, Future Great Wrestling. We've talked about Hooks. We've talked about JC Flash. We've talked about the demise of Douglas Andrews, his elimination from the business entirely, which leads to the rivalry that inevitably would lead you and I on a unstoppable collision course. And that is the rivalry between yourself and my client, Scotty Amos. If you would, William Wolf, since again we've never talked about this before, give your viewpoint of that rivalry and the situations, the occurrences that happened during that period of time. I'd love to hear your take on that series of events.
To me, that rivalry started, we got heat when Brian Beach won the title and retired, and Amos put him down. Now, you talked about how I was trained by Cody Hawk. You talked about how I was trained by Super Zeta. But I was also trained and mentored by Brian Beach, who's a good friend of mine. I did a little bit of traveling together, did some shows together. And Brian Beach is a huge influence both in the ring and out of it for me. I strive to bring an intensity like only Brian Beach can. And I think that's what's funny about the rivalry between Amos and myself, because I think that we have that in common. he took out Brian Beach to make a statement. Now, you say our rivalry started when we were watching the match the week before against Douglas Andrews, and you saw something in me and you wanted to make a statement. Well, it started for me when I saw what he did to Brian Beach when he retired. That was not something I was going to let stand, and I said my piece to him that night while I was in the ring. And the next thing I know he's coming out. I believe I was in the ring with Jonah Wales the very next week. I was taking his head off with a guillotine when Amos came out, kicked me in the head, put me in the crossface, and started our collision course.
Well, most of it. And you know, Brian Beach, I talk about him from time to time. I have nothing but respect for Brian Beach. You know, there were times prior to our storied past when he would help to show me a few things in the ring during training practices, like he has with many people in the business. And, you know, there's no question that he is, to date, the most intense in-ring performer I think we've ever seen within Future Great Wrestling. And to be quite honest, the situation with Amos laying him to waste, it was nothing personally against Brian Beach. It was a statement. It was a statement. If there was anything personal involved, it was more so personally having to do with Ripper Blackheart, who honestly is to blame for a lot of issues throughout FGW. A lot of pitfalls, mistakes, downfalls of a lot of individuals fall on the back of Ripper Blackheart. But before I go down that path, I'm going to take a deep breath.
Go down that path. You mentioned Ripper Blackheart and how he's the cause of this. And for once in this conversation, you and I are going to agree. Ripper Blackheart was supposed to be there for me the night I had my match with Scotty Amos. He was supposed to be in my corner. But where was he? He wasn't there, was he? Nope. He was, I don't know, at the hospital with his kid, I guess. Brandon Day came in, put his kid in the hospital, and he decided that was more important than being in the match with me, even though 3 weeks prior to that, he stood in the middle of the ring and asked me if I wanted to be his client. But no. That wasn't in the cards for him. I was no Brian Beach. He said that we were going to wreak havoc like him and Brian Beach did. And then, where was he? Not in my corner. So you're right. I've got my issues with River Blackheart, too.
You know what? William Wolf, I appreciate your sincere honesty. Because that is an honest take, because you're absolutely right. He, Ripper Blackheart, put Brian Beach in harm's way, and inevitably was the reason why Brian is no longer an active in-ring performer. He almost did the same thing to you. He left you high and dry. He left you in a terrible situation. I would never leave one of my clients in a situation like that, but he left you in that situation, and things escalated to a point where I wasn't quite expecting the level of brutality that happened from Amos. Obviously, the fans of Future Great Wrestling know that at the conclusion of your match with Amos, things went a little sideways. Things didn't go according as planned.
I remember it. You can say it.
I'm just
beat around the bush.
I'm just painting the picture for the listeners of the program. But Amos may have taken a baseball bat and cracked William Wolf in the head with it, allegedly, which led to a whole other series of events.
What do you mean allegedly? What do you mean allegedly? There's video of it.
Listen. I have seen the video proof is no one can find that. And I am certainly not going to say anything on a recording that I knew anything about it or that it was pre-planned. I didn't know anything about that.
Holding the baseball bat throughout the entire match.
That was merely a prop for intimidation. That's all.
Oh, okay.
That's all. So I had no clue that he was going to go to that extent. That shows you just, why Amos is, why he's a Darkness Worldwide member, because he has those tendencies. But you have those tendencies too, William Wolf. You do as well. Now, upon you being stricken in the head with that baseball bat, something happened.